Welcome everybody to this World Satsanga held on the 20th of April 2022 in conjunction with Kevin Moore and The Moore Show. And as usual, I encourage you to go to his YouTube channel, The Kevin Moore Show, and look at the different documentaries, reference, they call us channelers, and to see the different levels, different qualities of people who are in contact with the greater reality and the entities within the greater reality. Well, what we're going to do today is, rather than a lecture, we're going to have a little, shall we say, lesson in how to do a meditation technique that was taught by Paramahansa Yogananda. Now, in March's Satsanga, we went through the Kriya Yoga side of things, which is actually a bit more user-friendly when it comes to doing recording, video or audio recordings. But Hong-Sau can be done very easily and very quickly. And Hong-Sau is basically a Prana-Yama again. It's a breathing technique that also creates a focus for the person who's aspiring to be connected to the greater reality and source or God, if you want to call it that. So what happens is that basically we have a good posture. We can either sit cross-legged or in one of the half lotus or full lotus positions, or we can sit in a straight-backed chair that allows us to sit with our back straight and direct, our feet flat on the ground, and our palms of our hands uppermost on our upper thighs, and our closed eye vision is gently focused on the origin of the spiritual or third eye, which is in between the two eyebrows and above the bridge of the nose. And what we then do is we then breathe normally. And the focus of Hong-Sau is really the stating of Hong and Sau whilst we are breathing. And Hong is spelled H-O-N-G, like Hong Kong. And Sau is spelled S-A-U, but sounds like the way the word saw, S-A-W, is spelled in English. So Hong-Sau. And when we're breathing in, we mentally state the word Hong, and when we're breathing out, we mentally state the word Sau. And it's not a case of saying it with your vocal cords, speaking it out loud. It's always done with your mental voice. Okay, so there's no need to say Hong and Sau with your spoken voice. It's with your mental voice. And the word Hong and the word Sau is long enough to cope with the inspiration and expiration of air. So as I breathe in through my nose, I mentally state the word Hong. And as I breathe out through my nose, I mentally state the word Sau. So I'll do it with my voice so you can understand what I'm saying, because it's a long Hong and a long Sau. So as I'm breathing in, I mentally state the word Hong, so it's Hong. That's mentally stated, not with my voice. And as I'm breathing out, I mentally state the word Sau. Sau. So as you're breathing in and breathing out, you're mentally stating Hong for as long as it's needed and Sau for as long as it's needed. And you don't force the breathing, you basically let yourself breathe naturally. So Hong and Sau are stretched out as long as they need to be to cope with the inspiration of air and the expiration of air. Okay. Now, on top of this, there's also the need to, shall we say, pull or sense energy coming in, again through the, as with the Kriya Yoga, from the origin of the spiritual third eye, which is in between the two eyebrows and above the bridge of the nose, diagonally across to the base of the skull, where the medulla oblongata is in the brain, the so-called mouth of God, down the spine to the coccyx. Okay. That's breathing in, and then breathing out, the energy goes from the coccyx up the spine to the medulla oblongata at the base of the skull, diagonally across to the third eye and out again. Now that's in variation to what we do with Kriya Yoga. Because Kriya Yoga is the opposite. With Kriya Yoga, as you're breathing in, and you're breathing in with the the energy goes the other way around. The energy then goes from the coccyx up the spine to the medulla oblongata, the base of the skull, and out through the spiritual third eye. And when you're breathing out, it comes back in again through the spiritual third eye, diagonally across to the medulla oblongata, or the base of the skull, and down the spine to the coccyx. So Hong-Sau and Kriya Yoga are different in how they the visualization of energy goes with them. Okay, so it's best not to think of them as being, oh, it's the same as Kriya Yoga, or it's the same as Hong-Sau. They are different in terms of how we pull energy into the body and how it moves in through the body and out through the body. So breathing in, energy comes in with Hong-Sau. Breathing out, energy goes out with Hong-Sau. So it comes in through the third eye, diagonally across the base of the skull, down the spine to the coccyx when we're breathing in and saying Hong with our mentally spoken words. As we breathe out and say Saw, it goes up from the coccyx, up the spine to the base of the skull and medulla oblongata, and out diagonally across to the origin of the spiritual or third eye, which is in between the two eyebrows and above the bridge of the nose. And again, you do this, so you visualize this energy coming in and going out, or you feel it going in and coming out, as you're saying Hong and Saw mentally, as you're breathing in and out naturally. And Hong-Sau, like Kriya Yoga, is an evolutionary accelerant. And I can't remember the numbers now, but basically Kriya Yoga is significantly faster at creating evolutionary progression than Hong-Sau is, and Hong-Sau is significantly faster than standard evolutionary progression that we have by doing no Hong-Sau at all. So Hong-Sau and Kriya Yoga are a way of burning off karma and a way of increasing our evolutionary progression as a result of that. But Hong-Sau is more easy to do if you're in a position where you're, for instance, traveling on a train or an airplane or the backseat of somebody's car, or even driving. You can do Hong-Sau, and I've done many journeys breathing and mentally stating Hong-Sau, as against Kriya Yoga, which is more potentially noisy and a bit more disturbing to people if you're opening or closing your mouth in a way which is conducive to creating the air coming in and bouncing off the back of the throat and down to the bottom of the lungs, and then back again, bouncing off the back of the throat, back out the mouth again. So it's a little bit less intrusive in terms of how you appear to the general public. So Hong-Sau is quite good. It's quite universal. You can do it anywhere. Now, Hong-Sau means something. Those words mean something. And in effect, it's in the Hindu text, Hong and Sau means I am one with my father, and my father is one with me. It's a similar thing to me saying when I'm doing the traversing the frequencies and connecting people to source, as saying I am one with the source and the source is one with me. But I add on, I am the source. And you can do the same thing. I am one with my father is one with me, I am my father. It's basically saying an affirmative word or an affirmation that you are a smaller individualized unit of source or God. People refer to their God as being their father or their mother. So in essence, it's say you can say I'm one with the source is one with me, I am the source. You can say that if you want to doing Hong-Sau, you can put it in between, but it's best to keep Hong-Sau pure and just mentally state Hong-Sau. Okay, so that's how to do Hong-Sau. Breathing in through the nose, energy coming in from the spiritual third eye, diagonally across the base of the skull, down the spine to the coccyx, whilst mentally saying Hong, along Hong, Hong, and then breathing out through the nose, with the energy coming up from the coccyx, up the spine to the base of the skull, and diagonally across the spiritual third eye, while you're mentally stating Saw, along Saw, Saw. Okay, and it's done without stress in breathing. You breathe naturally. So the Hong and Saw have to, if you like, harmonize with the breathing, and in that way, you are able to make sure that you're not stressing yourself and creating an energy which is going to create resistance. It's just relaxed, breathing in, breathing out with your eyes closed, mentally stating Hong-Sau as you breathe in and breathe out, and visualizing or feeling the energy coming in into the body and out of the body. Okay. Hong-Sau basically means I'm one with my father is one with me. I am my father. I'm going to add that bit on at the end as well. Or we can think of it in terms of the Hindu way of saying I'm one with the source is one with me, I am the source. But if you state Hong-Sau, it's got more energy to it, it's in the Hindu, but in essence it means exactly the same thing. And actually stating I'm one with the source is one with me, I am the source, while meditating has also got the same power. So there we go. That's how to do Hong-Sau, and you can do it anywhere. It's a very, very good way of accruing additional evolutionary content, a free way of doing it, and you can do it by appearing to doze off in the back of somebody's car, or on a bus, or a train, or a plane, and you can do it without much problem. Okay, now it's time to go to the questions and answers.
So, first question, I asked in a previous Satsanga about the illusion of Jesus' crucifixion. You basically said it was real for some and not real for others, and that it was difficult to explain what that really means. Can you try to elaborate more on this if you can? Who was in the crowd and who was out? And was there really a crucifixion? Well, basically, Jesus was a master of understanding the greater reality, as was Buddha, as was Muhammad, and whole bunch of other individuals who've been incarnate, Babaji, Sri Yukteswar, Lahiri Mahashaya, and of course Paramahansa Yogananda, and many others, of course. And basically he was able to teach his disciples how to work with the greater reality. So what they did is they created an illusion. They worked together in metaconcert. That's a word that I've taken from Julian May. It's a fantastic word. It basically means that everybody's working in meditation together, collaboratively, and in union, creating a symbiotic relationship and of such a power that basically they were able to create an illusion. So everybody who was supposed to be there, such as Pontius Pilate, such as Barabbas, all these people who were the perpetrators of the so-called demise of Jesus were there. And everybody in the crowd experienced what they expected to experience, because the disciples had created an alternative reality. They basically, you could almost call it group hypnosis if you want to call it that, where they gave them what they wanted to see, which is a crucifixion. The Romans got what they wanted, the rebels got what they wanted, and again, the people who were Jesus' disciples got what they wanted, because actually Jesus wasn't crucified. They gave the illusion of him being crucified by projecting this into the minds of those individuals who were in the crowd and in the area. And so whilst this was happening, Jesus was basically rescued from the jail that he was in, and that's what happened. And Jesus then and the disciples then moved away. Okay, so that was basically what happened there, and that's in one of the books. I think it's in The Origin Speaks. We're just looking at my books up on the bookshelf. So if you read that, it'll be in there. But I might extract that text and add it to the email or the website and create a link on there so you can look at it yourselves. Next one is from Eliza. Okay, and this is from a friend of ours who used to look after the transcriptions, but is also working on the new book, which is a 13th book, which is going to be called World Satsanga, the First 10 Years. And the question is from Ella. You told us that we are like atoms in God's body, so God cannot feel what we feel. If so, why do humans have a nervous system that feels pain and pressure acutely when we are being tortured, raped, or killed, as is happening in Ukraine? It's a false equivalence to say we are atoms when atoms don't feel. How do we know atoms don't feel? We don't know how atoms feel. We don't know that quarks feel. We don't know that electrons feel. We don't know what they experience. We think we do. So why does God allow us to suffer when there is so much, when there is no need for such suffering for us to evolve? This seems like cruel and unusual punishment by God who's oblivious to us all. Well, basically, that's a very human question. And from a perspective of people who are thinking that God would save us from all this, well, we elect to experience all of this. We elect to experience every aspect of existence whilst we're incarnate over a number of different incarnations. So it's important for us to realize that although we, in the big picture and in the human side of understanding, we would expect the source or God to spare us from suffering, we chose to experience these things that we classify as suffering so that we can get a balanced level of evolutionary content. And therefore, as we evolve, our true energetic selves evolve, and so does the source, and so does the origin. And if we had things one way, if we experience only bliss and delight, then we wouldn't be experiencing things in a balanced way, and it wouldn't be a wholesome level of evolution. So it's a very human question, but it probably doesn't answer the question from a human perspective, because in real terms, we don't understand that we make decisions that are completely bizarre to the incarnate human being when we're in the energetic. We choose to have things like cancers. We choose to be murdered. We choose to be murderers. We choose to be in car crashes or air crashes. We choose to be in wars because we're experiencing the total gamut of potential possibilities that are here in this particular universal environment. Next one again. Putin is clearly an anarchist who has created chaos in the Middle East, neighboring countries, and now in the Ukraine. He said his soul is evolved, but does that matter much? Since he plays a dark entity who steals, hoards, pillages, and rapes and murders his opponents and civilians without remorse, unless he is held accountable for his actions, don't dictators like him keep going on a destructive path? Again, yes. The thing is, though, if you look at it from a different perspective again, that was the same with Hitler. That was the same with Idi Amin, etc., etc. We have all these different individuals who are, you can classify them as antichrists if you want to, but the whole point of them being here is to get us to work together again. Now, we had that a bit with the COVID-19, and it seems to have disappeared a bit now in terms of our working together. We're thinking about it with the environment, but when it comes to interacting with each other, we definitely need to work together and be of service to each other and to help each other evolve, and therefore collectively we evolve. And sometimes we need to have an antagonist to focus on to create that need to interact together collectively in the correct way. And some of these antagonists they're wicked, they're vicious, they're despicable, they are basically evil. And the reason for that is they have to be able to get us the worldwide focus, get us all thinking in the same direction. So to be able to experience all of that negativity from us, they have to be an evolved soul. So these individuals they're taking on board a lot of energy from us so that we can evolve. So we have to look at it from a completely different perspective. And this is going to be the basis for another book, okay, which is going to be about these types of individuals who incarnate on the earth. It's after the one I'm just about to start. Next question from Ola. What is the most interesting new thing you learned about the while you were writing the book about them? Now that would be giving the game away. I will say one thing. The apparently were a backup plan to the origin, and I'm going to leave it at that because that came out right towards the end of the book. So you're going to have to wait until Ozark publishes. Well, let's hope they do publish it. They've had it for nearly a month and a half now, so we'll see. So that's an interesting thing to think about. The apparently are a backup plan to the origins, rise to dominance as an evolved being, so to speak. That was the most interesting thing that came out, and I was quite surprised at that. So Daniels has said he's Putin and Antichrist, basically, yeah. So he's again an evolved soul, and it's up to us to stop him. Okay, next one from Andrew. How is the post-death experience different for someone who commits suicide? what happens upon their immediate termination? I remember reading in the AND dialogues that the aspect doesn't immediately go back to their test because they might contaminate the energies. Where do these aspects go then? Is it very traumatic or hellish, or do these aspects ever recover? Well, firstly, it's not hellish for them. It is, apart from the fact that it's difficult for them to understand at first what they've done, but they are treated with love, and they're treated with understanding, and they're treated with the utmost respect, so that they can become, shall we say, cleaned of the energies and the downward, well, downstream evolutionary debt that they've got, and they're helped in every way they can do, so they can remove that evolutionary debt, which may take a lot of incarnations. We're talking probably, you know, potentially a million incarnations to remove the evolutionary debt that is lost by those souls downstream of them that they may have contacted, and those souls may have contacted them, and those souls may have contacted those as well. So there is no hell in this instance. There is no blame in this instance. There is only understanding and love, and let's see what we can do to move away from this and help you progress further on behalf of your true energetic self. And I think the book, the AND dialogues, explains it quite well from a mechanical perspective. So I think it's worthwhile reading that as well, to understand that. So yeah, try to, if you can find the book, or you can get the Kindle version, have a look at that, because it does explain the mechanic side of it. But my understanding is that it's, you know, they're helped to overcome it and to basically become a better soul at the end of it. Next question. Why did the Buddha emphasize the doctrine of anatta, or non-self, the idea that humans possess no permanent substance that can be called self? Doesn't the fact that we are aspects of with tesses undermine the Buddhist assertion? What is your own interpretation of the term matana? Well, I've not heard of the word before, but I can basically say that from my perspective, this is an understanding of the fact that the incarnate aspect, or soul, is simply an individualized unit of a larger volume of sentience and energy. And so when a soul is returned, or returns after an incarnation, and they go back into one of the forms of communion, specifically fully dissolved communion, they become just part of that sentience. There's no individualization, and I feel that's what it's talking about there. But it's also talking about the permanent substances, means that, you know, as sentience, we don't actually need energy, although we use energy, whether it's gross physical energy or other energies, to allow us to experience, learn, and evolve in the different universal environments. We are, as sentience, not dependent upon energy. So sentience can detach itself from energy and be just sentient in its own. And so therefore, the thinking process therefore goes that the true energetic self is actually the true sentient self, rather than an entity which is sentience and energy, or sentient energy. It is sentience using a volume of energy to experience an environment. So that's the permanent structure bit, I feel, as well. It's understanding that, you know, we don't have anything that's permanent. Everything is fluid. Everything is formless. Next question. Many channelers and astrologers talk about this as a time of great awakening. Is that the case? And if so, is there a special way we can support and participate? Sometimes we have to experience downward trends to be able to appreciate our upward trends in terms of our evolution and in terms of our frequential levels. And we were experiencing a very, very good upward trend, which sort of plateaued around 2012, 2013. So from the perspective of the Great Awakening, what's happening is not specifically a spiritual awakening, but more an understanding of how we should behave to be able to maintain our existence. Because we're very close. We're very close to the same reset point that the Atlantean civilization had. And so we need to get to this point where it's like we decide one way or another way. We decide in the way which is selfish, and we drop off the table, and this particular civilization is dissolved. Or we decide to take the bull by the horns and say, okay, what do we need to do to continue our existence and to evolve further? And that means we need to look after the environment. It means we have to be of service to each other and work with each other. And in doing so, we raise our frequencies. And doing so, we start to understand who and what we really are. And then we start to realize that everything we do from a material world perspective, in terms of being addicted to the materialistic condition, which involves things like material wealth, status, belongings, is meaningless. There's an old saying, there's no pockets in shrouds, and that's absolutely right. It doesn't matter how much money you've got, how much of a billionaire or a trillionaire you are, the physical form demises, and it's worthless at the end of the day. So it's really about us understanding who and what we are. Maybe from a fundamental perspective first, from the total population of the earth, but from spiritualist perspective, people will start to realize that, we are definitely part of something bigger, and therefore, as we start to consider this and meditate more and be of service more, we start to rise to the frequencies, and then we start to have an increased communicative bandwidth, which allows us to get more contact with who and what we really are, and therefore we become enlightened. Okay, next question again. Does Putin have cancer? Was he Caesar in a previous life? Oh, that's okay. That's a question. He has significant levels of stress. He has significant ego to deal with, of course. Was he Caesar in a previous life? There were many Caesars. One of the aspects of his tests was a great leader in those times. You could have classified it as a Caesar, but not actually it himself, not actually the soul that he's Putin right now. Next question: will the Om change the role and work as it does in the future as a result of more publicity or something else? No, I've got a feeling that the Om are going to stay in the background, out of the way. They're going to they don't really like to be involved with anything that's any hint of being part of the evolutionary cycle, and then they're not happy with those other of the pure or non-captive status, so to speak, being involved in frequencies this low. It's of a concern because there's not many of them, so they're not particularly happy about it. That's for sure. There may be some help from the hybrid Om to help with again our awakening process, giving us hints or ideas or broadcasting different ways of existing, which will probably be, by the look of it, assisted by the white children, and of course hybrids of the other children, the crystal, rainbow and indigo children, which is something else to consider as well. So it's very important to recognize that we are getting help, but it's not from where we think it is, and those entities that are here are and have been part of the evolutionary cycle, certainly ascended masters, so to speak. The Om don't specifically evolve as such directly from being in anything, and they're not interested in being in the evolutionary cycle because it creates responsibility, and they don't want to be responsible for anything because it ties them down. And that's again, that's in the book, The Om, the Uncreated Creations. Next question: do you know when the war will end? What outcome do you expect? I'm seeing it finishing before the end of the year, so that's about 6 months or more, isn't it? And what I'm seeing is that the world will get together in a more forthright but correct way, and that will be the way that they'll win over Putin, because what I'm getting here is it's not specifically an issue with Russia or the Russian people. It's just that leader and the people who he's got around them to perpetuate it. And if you look at how things happened in Germany in sort of the post First World War, and then the sort of rise of Nazi era, and before the Second World War, there was a very similar things starting to occur. In fact, if you look at it around the world, if you look at some of our world leaders, we've got similar levels of individuals worldwide in leadership positions. So it's quite an amplification of the way that we as the population need to respond in terms of being sensible in who we put in place to govern us. That's one of the things we need to consider, because they're all showing similar things. Okay, they're all showing similar ways in which they got into power. Next question: was Putin Prince Platov the last governor of Catherine the Great, who gave him parts of Ukraine in their previous life to rule over? Putin's secret naming. No, I think there's too much. What's the word for it? Too much focus on previous incarnations. I'm seeing that basically the soul that is now Putin hasn't been on Earth for about 500 years. So it's so things to understand why he's doing this is from a human perspective based on previous incarnations doesn't really work. This is to do with providing a focus for us to get together for a common cause and supposedly a common good. We're making progress. We're a bit flatline at the moment. Overall we're making progress, but we are currently in a flat line. If you think about this, our evolution has been like an average that's going upwards at different rates, but we also have little sawtooth profiles, and some of those sawtooth profiles are big sawtooth profiles as well. Well, right now we're at sort of the bottom bit of one of the sawtooth profiles, big sawtooth profiles. So we are overall, on average, we are progressing, but it's not dramatic at the moment because we're turning this curve. Next question, Andrew. Could an aspect implant drug addiction into our life on purpose before taking birth? As in, could drug addiction be taken up as a challenge which an aspect chooses to experience and overcome? If so, what percentage of drug addicts plan their addiction in advance? Yes, they can put that into their life plan. But in general, it doesn't happen. Although we do see it quite a lot. We do see, people with homelessness and drug addiction that's sort of perpetuating that being in incarnation. But in general, my understanding is that drug addiction, alcohol addiction, food addiction, wealth addiction, status addiction is all part of being here in the gross physical, and it's something that we even things like sex as well. It's things that or being powerful places and coercing people and making them do things that they wouldn't normally do. All of these things are a function of being at a low frequency and being addicted to low frequency thoughts, behaviors, and actions. And the outcome of taking drugs is in effect one of those things where we try something and we like it and we oh, let's do that again, oh, let's do it again, oh, let's do it again, and therefore we get addicted to whatever that thing is that we like to experience. So there are a lot of souls who actually get affected by things like drug addiction or alcohol addiction, etc., as a function of basically being caught out thinking they could master it and they can't. And as a result of that, they get the karmic loop or karmic downward spiral where they take more and more thinking they can cope with it and they can't. So taking drugs is also karmic, and karma is basically our addiction to some form of low frequency thought, behavior, and action. Okay. Okay, Alejandro, what are the effects of stress from a spiritual level? Can we evolve if we are in a stressful environment? How can we best work with stress and raise and maintain our energy? We need to detach. We need to detach from that which is giving us stress. And that's difficult because if we don't detach ourselves, then we get embroiled in it, we get involved with it, rather than standing back and seeing it as something, as a challenge we need to deal with. We start to see it as a shall we say, something which is personal and is not something which needs to be not something that needs to be done like a job or or a experience we need to experience. It is a slur on our personality that we don't like, or it's something we don't feel we can do it and we get anxious about. But really, if we detach ourselves and just do the best we can, and then that helps with our stress levels. Certainly, some of the things about stress are, time stress. We have to get something done before a certain time finishes, and sometimes we don't have the capability. If we don't have the capability, though, we need to ask for help, and that's where the experience comes into it. If we can't do it, let's ask for help, and that helps us with stress, because we can then share the problem, and we're working together. And the person who's helping you out is being of service to you, to help you sort that problem out, and you're being a selfless service to them because you're giving them the opportunity to help you. So it's a two-way thing there. Next question. Often just after experience a new higher level of frequency or understanding in my meditations, things in my outer life become challenging. Is there a correlation? Is it about integrating higher frequencies into the physical world? Sometimes it is about testing our resolve, testing our ability to, us testing ourselves, that is, to stay at a higher frequency in challenging environments. And so we can feel really, really good. And I've experienced this lots myself as well. And I don't know, as everybody else has here, is that we can come out feeling really good and the ego is boosted. And then we get something else in there to challenge the fact that we, are we still going to feel good if this happens that we didn't expect? We've done something which has helped somebody, and then somebody else has said, oh, you shouldn't have done that. So we start to realize that sometimes what makes us feel good is our ego, rather than understanding what's created the progressive movement, certainly in meditations. So really, it's about challenging ourselves and just testing that we can maintain our frequencies, even though we've just got this new frequency level and we get straight into a low frequency environment. Next question. What is love? What does love have to do with source? And if the source is love and everything is source, then why is there not love everywhere? If the origin is beyond all experiences, does that mean it is beyond love as well? Human love is completely different to what we experience in a bliss-like state in communion with source, or if source was in communion with origin, because it involves omnipresence and omnipotence and omniscience. So it's a completely different thing. And what we experience here is like a significant reduction in experience of those sorts of things. So what we experience here is really a low frequency communicative emotion in reality, which is different. So even though we're doing bad things, source loves us, God loves us. Even though we're doing good things, God loves us, because we're part of it. And it understands that we are putting ourselves in difficult situations so that we evolve, and as we evolve, it evolves. So I don't know if it's answering the question, but it's something to understand that in real terms, we don't understand love at all. We don't understand. It's like total acceptance, total forgiveness. It's a completely different. I mean, I can't explain it. It's a completely different way of experiencing things. It's like you can't ever do anything wrong, or you're always loved irrespective of what you do. You're always part of something much bigger. You're always part of it, and that part of it is like total omnipresence, total omniscience. It's unbelievable. It's just, and that is what sort of true love really is. It's this communion. So it's got mega communion. Okay, so we've got 10 minutes. Right, next question. If aspects are essentially bundles of karma, then once an aspect's karma runs out, is that aspect extinguished, fully communed, etc., or are we aspects created independently from karma with an aim to experience, learn, and evolve beyond its bondage? Simply put, does the aspect exist beyond the cessation of karma? We aren't really bundles of karma, other than the fact we do get addicted to being here, and the objective is to master being here and not experience addiction in any form. So the objective is to be in the physical, but not of the physical. When we do that, we ascend, or we evolve past the point of needing to incarnate to accelerate our evolutionary progression. Those entities that have done that are called ascended masters, and there are thousands of them, not just the famous 12 that we know about and a few others, but well, probably millions of them, to be honest. But once they've achieved the mastery of existing in the physical, they're not extinguished, because they've still got to experience all aspects of the multiverse and still perform a function of providing an evolutionary basis for their true energetic self. So just because we don't come to the physical anymore doesn't mean we're not continuing to evolve. However, once we've all that's it, the true energetic self and its projected aspects have experienced every aspect of the multiverse and all potential interactions or circumstances and environments supporting it, then we enter into recommunion, because we finished our evolutionary cycle and we collectively, together with the true energetic self, recommune with source. And then when all other true energetic selves have done that, and all of those individualized units of sentience from source have come back to source, then the source starts a new evolutionary cycle in another location within the origin. And I feel that the Hindu texts explain this quite nicely with the breathing in and breathing out of the universe. I was absolutely amazed when I read that later in a book by Yogi Ramachakara, who was writing these books back in the 19th century, into the 19th century. Yeah. Next question. When we're in the spiritual, do we pay attention to the earth, or what do we? Only if we're planning, only if we're helping another aspect or soul, and only if we are planning another incarnation do we start to pay attention to what's going on earth, or if we're deciding to help in some other way or want to help in a larger way, then we pay attention to it. Other than that, we're working on what we've experienced, learned and evolved through, and our guides and helpers are also looking at how they've benefited as well. And we then work upon what we might want to do later, or whether our true energetic self wants to work on later. Next question, from Eliza. I encountered an entity in my meditations who gave me a name, Reginald. Is he a royal lion of Sirius? What dimension are these great lions of Lovina, and what is their role? My understanding is that some of these entities are, in effect, incarnate entities like us, but at a higher frequency. So they're not in another dimension as such. Whilst they're incarnate, they're still in the first full dimension, but they're in a higher frequency than where we are now. And generally the fourth frequency, so the Arcturians, Assyrians, and Pleiadians, those sort of the popular people civilizations that people refer to are in about the fourth frequency level. So they're outside of our visual range, but they are basically still a physical incarnation, and they are basically just another civilization, but they understand how to work together. So that's why there's a feeling of love about them, because they understand on a greater level than what we do, because they are connected to their true energetic selves or higher selves and source at a higher level, albeit one frequency level, whilst they're incarnate. Well, we're starting to come down to the last 5 minutes, so we're if we can't finish the last couple of questions, I will just add them on at the end, and you'll see them when you log on to the YouTube channel. Next question, though, we've got time for this. If we're so close to reset like Atlantis, why aren't we getting more help from the white children or the higher frequency beings? Well, we're being given lots of milestones. We're being given lots of nudges, lots of hints. It's just that maybe we're too blind to see them, such as the number of different leaders we've got in power are just incapable of doing the job properly, such as we're not looking after our environment, and we're still destroying our environments, even though we know it's going to kill us, such as we're not looking after each other, we're not working with each other properly, and as such we're allowing wars to happen, or people to be die in famine, or poor states of education. We're seeing all these things, but it's not going into our heads. So so we are being given the information, but we are not responding to it. But there will be a level of response, and it's starting to grow. As some of the white children start to become more mature, we'll start to see that the assistance is being given, but not in a sit up and take notice direction. Because if somebody stands on a pedestal and tells us we've got to do this, that, and the other, we don't do it. We need to have somebody who is able to motivate the masses to do things in an individual way, whilst it's also being in a collective way. It's like we need to program ourselves to do it, not be told to do it. This is what they're doing. Well, I hope they'll be doing, because certainly the one that's involved in the Greta Thunberg body is starting to create a groundswell of opinion, which is very, very good. I think this might be the last question we can go through right now. I often feel like I'd do better being on the other side, being a guide and helper of the evolutionary cycle. Can aspects switch and become a guide and helper whenever they want to, or are they stuck in their role as incarnate entities? There are rare times when a guide incarnates and is in the evolutionary cycle for a few lives, and there are times when an aspect or true entity itself can elect to move out of the evolutionary cycle and be in the service side of it. So it can happen. It is rare, but it does happen, and I believe that's in the Curators, which is another interesting thing to look at. You can do. It's in the Curators. So if you can get a chance to look at that, you'll see it in there. It is difficult though, and I think it's also in the AND dialogues. That the guides and helpers do incarnate at times just to get a feel for what influence they're having, and an aspect can, in the right circumstances, but it's rare, move on to being a guide or even a helper. It's more like to be a helper first, though, because they need to understand that the work of a guide is multi-reality based or multi-event space based. It's not just dealing with one individual, it's dealing with the individual and its parallel versions created through their choices and the different realities they create and the different event spaces they create. Well, I think that this is probably the best time to finish now, because we're just about to lose the time. Excellent questions, thank you very much. So namaste to you all.
Welcome to the meditation, and this meditation is how to heal one's traumas or overcoming one's traumas. And this has been requested as a meditation, and it's actually very good, because right now we're experiencing lots of trauma all around us and all over the world. So let's just get ourselves in the correct meditative posture, of sitting down cross-legged or in half or full lotus, if you prefer that, or in the Western way of doing things, in a straight backed chair with our feet flat on the ground, spine straight or erect, and our palms, the palms of our hands, uppermost in our upper thighs. And eyes gently closed and focused, again gently on the spiritual or third eye, the origin of the spiritual or third eye. We'll just allow ourselves to calm down a moment. What I want you to do then is to look at a particular trauma that you've got. Identify the datum of that trauma in terms of location, in terms of time, in terms of individuals associated with it. And this could be a personal trauma, or it could be a global trauma, or something that affects you as a function of some form of global issue or event, so to speak. Anything like that that's affected you traumatically or given you an emotional response which is difficult to cope with. Now I want you to position yourself in the location and the time with the individuals surrounding the trauma. Not necessarily re-experience the trauma or remember the trauma, but just give yourself the time to forgive yourself for reacting or absorbing the energy or the emotion associated with the trauma in the way that you have. Consider it as being something that happened in a faraway land, a faraway time, that hasn't affected you in this incarnation. Just forgive yourself for being affected by it. Then visualize the individuals associated with the trauma and forgive them for creating the trauma. Forgive them totally and fully and send them love. For they have given you an opportunity to experience, learn, and evolve, to become more expansive. It may not have seemed like that at the start of the trauma, but now you understand it was simply an experience. By forgiving yourself for responding in that particular way, good. You can feel yourself calming down. Now, consider yourself in the same environment and forgive the environment for being the stage of the trauma. Again, being in that location no longer gives you an emotional response. Now forgive yourself and the environment and individuals that may have been part of the trauma for all being in the same space, the same event space that created the possibility of this trauma. Forgive event space if you want to for the potential of its happening. Feel the freedom associated with no longer being attached to this particular event that's created the trauma. The coming together of you, other incarnate souls within an environment and the circumstance surrounding that environment. So also forgive the circumstance that created the chance of this particular trauma as well. In forgiving yourself, the individuals, the environment, and the circumstance, you create a triangulated effect that eradicates any link associated with the trauma and how it affects you in this particular now. Just feel the calmness, feel the detachment. Again, it feels like it's something that happened to somebody else, not you, long time ago in a completely different location. The attachment to it's gone, the emotional content about it's gone, the mental link to it has gone. As you progress from this meditation, you'll realize that as things happen to you that creates potential links to the trauma, that the trauma no longer affects you in the way that it used to. It will simply wash over you, a bit like water for duck's back. It'll just be the noise in the background. That which you don't consider in your daily routine, your daily observations, your daily work, your daily movements. And so slowly come back into the room, slowly open your eyes, take a drink of water to help ground you. And you can go through this meditation as often as you like, and to help with various different traumas. If you have more than one trauma, maybe more. Some people have more than one trauma, some people have no traumas because they're already quite good at distancing themselves from it. That's the end of this Satsanga. Thank you very much for joining, and as always, it's a joy to be able to work with people in this way, and I look forward to joining you in the next Satsanga in May. So namaste to you all, and God's love to you all.